The lawyer from Arras, Maximilien Robespierre, was not born to be a revolutionary firebrand. Born in the provincial town of Arras in 1758, his childhood was marked by sadness and abandonment. His mother died when he was 6, and his father, a grief-stricken and irresponsible lawyer, soon deserted the family, leaving the young Maximilien and his siblings to be raised by their grandparents. From a young age, he was a serious, studious, and intensely private boy. He was a brilliant scholar, earning a scholarship to the prestigious Collège Louis le Grand in Paris. There, he immersed himself in the classics and, most importantly, in the radical political philosophy of the Enlightenment. He became a fervent disciple of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who argued that the only legitimate government was one based on the general will of the people and that true virtue was found in a simple, uncorrupted life. After becoming a lawyer, Robespierre returned to Arras, where he gained a reputation as a champion of the poor and oppressed. He was a man of impeccable, almost Spartan, personal habits. He didn't drink, he didn't gamble, and he lived a simple, modest life. He was known for his unwavering commitment to his principles, a quality that would earn him his famous nickname, l'Incorruptible, the Incorruptible. When King Louis XVI, facing the catastrophic financial crisis, summoned the Estates General in 1789, the first National Assembly in 175 years, Robespierre was elected as a representative of the Third Estate, the commoners, from his hometown. The quiet, fastidious lawyer was heading to Versailles, to the very center of a storm that was about to break over France. Voice of the people in the tumultuous early days of the French Revolution, Robespierre was not a major player. He was a small, slight figure with a weak voice and a formal, almost prim, demeanor. In the grand assembly halls filled with powerful orators, he was often overlooked. But he possessed two qualities that would eventually make him unstoppable: an unshakable self-belief in the righteousness of his own ideas and a relentless persistence. He joined the most radical political club of the day, the Jacobin Club, and slowly but surely his influence grew. He spoke constantly, always on the side of the common people. He argued for universal male suffrage, for the abolition of slavery, for an end to the death penalty, and for the rights of the poor. While other politicians compromised and shifted their positions, Robespierre remained steadfast, a pure and unwavering voice of revolutionary principle. To the sans-culottes, the radical working-class militants of Paris, he became a hero, their trusted advocate. They saw in this impeccably dressed, powder-wigged lawyer the embodiment of their struggle. As the revolution grew more radical, Robespierre's star rose with it. In 1792, the monarchy was abolished and the king, Louis XVI, was put on trial. While many wavered, Robespierre argued with chilling logic that the king must die to prove the revolution was real. Louis must die, he declared, so that the nation may live. The king was sent to the guillotine in January 1793, an act that sent shockwaves across Europe and pushed the French Revolution into its most extreme and violent phase. The Committee of Public Safety. By 1793, the young French Republic was on the brink of collapse. It was beset on all sides by foreign armies, as the monarchies of Europe united to crush the revolution. Within its own borders, it was torn apart by counter-revolutionary uprisings, economic chaos, and bitter political infighting. The revolution was in danger of devouring itself. In this moment of profound national crisis, the revolutionary government created an extraordinary new body, the Committee of Public Safety. It was a 12-man executive council granted almost dictatorial powers to do whatever was necessary to save the Republic. Maximilien Robespierre was its leading and most influential member. It was from this position that Robespierre and his radical Jacobin allies would unleash the reign of terror. Fueled by a potent mixture of genuine patriotic fervor and a deep-seated paranoia, they sought to purge France of all its enemies, real and imagined. They passed the law of suspects, a decree so vague that almost anyone could be accused of being an enemy of liberty. A network of revolutionary tribunals was established across the country, and the guillotine, the national razor, began to rise and fall with horrifying frequency in the public squares of France. The terror was declared the order of the day. What had begun as a revolution for liberty was now a government that ruled by fear. The Republic of Virtue. Robespierre's ultimate justification for the terror was the creation of a Republic of Virtue. This was his utopian dream, a society based on the austere, civic-minded principles of his idol, Rousseau. In this new France, selfishness, greed, and corruption would be replaced by a devotion to the nation, a love of equality, and a commitment to public morality. The terror, in his mind, was a necessary and painful purification, a crucible in which the corrupt old world would be burned away to forge a new virtuous French citizen. Terror, he famously argued, is nothing other than justice, prompt, severe, inflexible. It is therefore an emanation of virtue. To create this republic, the Committee of Public Safety, under Robespierre's guidance, embarked on a radical de-Christianization campaign. Churches were closed, religious icons were smashed, and the Cathedral of Notre Dame was rededicated as a temple of reason. He sought to replace Christianity with a new state religion, the cult of the Supreme Being, a deistic faith based on a belief in a single creator God and the immortality of the soul. In June 1794, at the height of his power, Robespierre personally presided over the Festival of the Supreme Being, a bizarre and grandiose public ceremony in which he, dressed in a sky-blue coat and carrying a bouquet of flowers, acted as a kind of high priest, a spectacle that unnerved many of his colleagues who saw in it a sign of his growing megalomania. The revolution devours its children as the terror intensified. It became a weapon used by revolutionary factions to destroy each other. Robespierre, increasingly paranoid, saw conspiracies everywhere. First, he moved against the radical Hebridists on his left, who he believed were anarchic and dangerously atheistic. They were rounded up and sent to the guillotine. Next, he turned on the Indulgents on his right, a faction led by his old friend and fellow revolutionary, the charismatic and larger-than-life Georges Danton. Danton, a man who had been a driving force of the early revolution, now argued that the terror had served its purpose, and it was time for moderation and reconciliation. To Robespierre, this call for clemency was a form of treason, a weakening of the revolutionary will. In a chilling display of ideological purity over personal loyalty, Robespierre had Danton and his allies arrested. At his trial, Danton famously declared, "My only regret is that I am going before that rat Robespierre." In April 1794, Danton was guillotined with the execution of the Dantonists. Robespierre was now the undisputed, all-powerful center of the revolutionary government. But he was also increasingly isolated. He had eliminated all of his major rivals, but in doing so, he had shown everyone that no one was safe. The Great Terror in the summer of 1794, with foreign armies in retreat and the internal rebellions largely crushed, it seemed the justification for the terror was gone. Instead, it accelerated. Robespierre supported the passing of the law of 22 Prairial, a terrifying decree that stripped accused enemies of the people of any right to a defense and made death the only possible punishment. This new phase, the Great Terror, was a period of intense, concentrated paranoia and bloodshed. The prisons of Paris were overflowing, and the guillotines were working faster than ever. The revolution had descended into a fever dream of denunciations and executions. Members of the revolutionary government themselves now lived in constant fear. Robespierre's speeches became more and more abstract and threatening, filled with vague denunciations of unnamed conspirators and traitors within their own ranks. No one knew who the next target would be. His colleagues, who had once admired His incorruptibility now saw a tyrant who was preparing to purge them all. The Thermidorian reaction, the end came swiftly and dramatically. On the 8th of Thermidor, July 26, 1794, Robespierre appeared before the National Convention and delivered a long, rambling, and ominous speech. He claimed to have a new list of traitors, but he refused to name them. It was a catastrophic political miscalculation. For the terrified deputies of the convention, it was a threat that united all the disparate factions, moderates, former terrorists, and corrupt officials against him in a conspiracy of self-preservation. The next day, the 9th of Thermidor, July 27, when Robespierre tried to speak at the convention, he was shouted down. The chamber erupted in a chorus of "Down with the tyrant." The deputies, who had once trembled before him, voted for his arrest and the arrest of his key allies. Even then, the fight was not quite over. Robespierre and his allies were freed by troops from the Paris Commune and taken to the Hôtel de Ville, City Hall, their last stronghold. But the sans-culottes, the Parisian militants who had once been his power base, failed to rise in his defense. They were exhausted by the terror and alienated by the execution of their radical heroes. In the early hours of the morning, troops loyal to the convention stormed the building. In the chaotic final moments, Robespierre was shot in the jaw, shattering it. Whether it was a suicide attempt or the shot of a gendarme remains a mystery. The fall of the Incorruptible. The following afternoon, on the 10th of Thermidor, July 28, 1794, Maximilien Robespierre, the Incorruptible, the architect of the terror, was taken to the Place de la Révolution, the very square where he had sent King Louis XVI, Danton, and thousands of others to their deaths. His head wrapped in a bloody bandage, he was laid on the plank of the guillotine. When the executioner ripped off the bandage, Robespierre let out a single agonized scream. Then the blade fell. The crowd, the same crowd that had once cheered his name, erupted in a roar of celebration that lasted for 15 minutes. The legacy of a revolutionary, the death of Robespierre, marked the end of the most radical phase of the French Revolution. The reign of terror was dismantled, the Jacobin Club was closed, and a more conservative, bourgeois republic was established. Robespierre remains one of the most controversial and enigmatic figures in history. Was he a selfless, idealistic champion of the people, a visionary who tried to create a perfect republic of virtue? Or was he a cold, fanatical tyrant, a monster who sent his own friends to their deaths in the name of an abstract and bloody ideology? The truth is that he was both. He was a man whose unwavering belief in the righteousness of his own principles was both his greatest strength and his most fatal flaw. He was the incorruptible idealist who, in his quest to create a utopia on earth, embraced terror as his primary tool, ultimately becoming the tyrant he had sworn to destroy. His story stands as a timeless and terrifying warning of how the noblest of revolutionary dreams can descend into the darkest of nightmares.